I used to think the worst thing at a family gathering was being asked when I was going to get married. I was wrong. The worst thing is when the entire family seems to form a small courtroom, ready to judge you just because you live your life your own way, no husband, no kids, and daring to smile because of it. The half-pitying, half-sneering looks, the questions pretending to be warm but hiding knives. And at the center of this storm, it's me, Mary, 35 years old, charged with never having given birth. I had prepared myself for this year's family gathering. That means I prepared a fake smile, a few neutral responses, and a dress polite enough for my mom not to frown. I thought, as long as I keep the attitude of, there's so much more in life to worry about than my uterus, it would be fine. But the moment I stepped into Aunt Pam's wooden house in Vermont, where the whole family gathers every year, I realized I was too naive. The warmth of the fireplace and the smell of pumpkin pie couldn't cover the coldness in the eyes I received. My younger cousins whispered something, and then burst into laughter. My cousin Vanessa, who had just had her fourth child 6 months ago, rushed over to hug me, followed by a painful whisper. "I thought you'd bring someone special this year, or at least, a baby bump." I smiled. A stiff smile. "No one special, but I have a very lovely investment account." Vanessa laughed as if I'd made a joke, but her eyes were as cold as ice. And as for my mom, it goes without saying, she sat on the sofa next to my grandmother, both sipping tea as if watching a play. My mom glanced at me and sighed. "Mary's alone again, and she's 35 already. It's time to think seriously, honey." "I am thinking seriously, Mom, about buying a second condo in Colorado," I replied, still maintaining a gentle tone. "Money can't keep you warm, dear," she remarked, then turned to my grandmother and said louder, "Our girl, making all this money, yet has no one to share it with." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream, "I'm living fine, happy, Mom!" But I knew anything I said would be seen as defiance. So I smiled, poured myself a glass of wine, and tried to swallow the lump of frustration in my stomach. The party had just begun. In the kitchen, the moms chatted about school, diapers, and Facebook parent groups. I felt completely out of place. Every time I tried to join in with a story about work, I'm a product development lead at a major tech company, someone would quickly steer the conversation elsewhere, or interrupt with a mocking tone. "Wow, you must be so busy, but I guess it makes sense, you don't have any kids." I didn't react. I was used to it. I was too used to people looking down on anything that didn't involve marriage or children. But the climax came at dinner. The whole extended family sat around a long oak table. Turkey, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie were passed around. I sat between two cousins who were proudly showing off pictures of their toddlers. At the head of the table, my dad clinked his glass, laughing. "We should thank God for the wonderful children this family has. Each one is a gift." I lifted my glass, about to take a sip, when my cousin Amanda, the one who always looks like she just stepped out of a mommy magazine, turned to me, her eyes glittering with fake sweetness. "And Mary is still waiting for the gift of her life, huh?" The laughter rippled. I set my glass down. "Actually, I feel like I've received that gift, freedom." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? Freedom from responsibility? From emotions? From raising a generation?" "Freedom to choose. And to live the life I want," I answered slowly. But no one listened. No one really listened. My dad said something about family values. My mom muttered that I'd been stubborn since I was little. One of my cousins piped up. "I heard that after 35 infertility skyrockets. If you want kids, you'd better hurry." I stood up suddenly, knocking over my napkin. Everyone looked up, a few snickered. I didn't say anything. I walked out of the dining room, onto the porch, where the cold wind cut through my face. But it was more comfortable than any words inside. I stood there, alone, in the Vermont winter. The yellow lights from the windows reflected the mocking faces, the looks of people who either didn't understand me, or didn't want to. I'd spent my whole life becoming the woman I wanted to be. Independent, strong, not reliant on anyone. I traveled the world, from Iceland to New Zealand. I built a career many would dream of. I live in an apartment overlooking Lake Michigan and wake up early to do yoga every morning. But to my family, all of that means nothing. Because I don't have kids. And that night, for the first time in many years, I asked myself, am I truly living for myself? Or am I just living for them? I returned to the dinner table when dessert was served, trying to pretend as if I hadn't just stepped out onto the porch to take a long, angry breath. Apple pie, vanilla ice cream, red wine. Everything looked perfect. If only I didn't feel like an alien in my own family. I sat down, trying to avoid the probing gazes from my mom and my cousin. It seemed like things had reached their lowest point, but I was wrong. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Uncle David, who was always the first to get drunk, suddenly asked, "Where's Laura? It's been years since she's been home." I flinched when I heard my sister's name. Laura, the sister who had been treated like a Disney princess in this family, had vanished from our lives nearly 8 years ago. The last time I saw her was at a family therapy session mandated by the court. She stormed out of the room, slammed the door behind her, and never looked back. "Same as always, rolling around with some addicts," Aunt Pam remarked coldly, as if she were tossing a stone into a dry well. Everyone chuckled, then immediately changed the subject. I was left stunned. No one asked more. No one cared. Not a word for Jamie. Jamie. I had never met the boy, but I knew he was Laura's son, born when she was just 20 and spiraling into drugs, violent relationships, and mounting debt. I had heard rumors that she took Jamie from one house to another, from one foster home to the next, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. News about them disappeared almost simultaneously, with Laura's name falling off every family dinner list. I turned to Aunt Pam. "What about Jamie? How is he now?" I asked, my voice low but firm. Aunt Pam glanced up from her plate and shrugged, as if I had just asked about the weather in Florida. "He's in the system, foster care, who knows?" "You mean, he's in a shelter?" "Yeah, his mom doesn't have the ability to care for him. Lost custody last year. I hear he's with some foster family now. But kids like that, they get moved around like clothes." I turned to look at my mom. She didn't oppose, didn't speak, just silently scooped more ice cream onto her plate. "And, has anyone in the family thought about taking him in?" The room suddenly went silent, forks froze. Eyes turned toward me as if I had said something terribly absurd. Cousin Vanessa broke the silence. "Mary, do you even know what it means to raise a child? It's not like having a dog." "He's our nephew," I emphasized. "He's my sister's son." My mom let out a long sigh, as if bothered by a bad play. "You wouldn't understand, Mary. You don't have children, you don't get it. It's not that simple. And so it's better to just throw him into the system?" My dad, the quietest at the table, spoke up. "We tried, okay? But Laura wouldn't cooperate. She didn't want anyone interfering, and Jamie, that kid, he's got issues. Really hard to control. No one in this family has the time or the resources for that." I glared at each one of them, each face that shared my blood, each mouth that had mocked me for not being a mother, and now coldly turned its back on a child with nowhere to call home. I didn't sleep that night. I drove away from Aunt Pam's house at 2 a.m., my head spinning. The anger drowned out the sadness. I couldn't even imagine. My family, the ones who used to greet each other warmly every holiday, now quietly dismissing a child from their lives like this. I didn't want to pretend anymore. The very next morning, I started looking for information. After a few phone calls, an account accessing the social welfare system, and help from a colleague who worked with child protection, I found out Jamie's full name, Jamie Brooks, and where he was temporarily living. A foster family on the outskirts of Syracuse. I gasped as I read the description. Male child, 10 years old. Signs of behavioral issues from trauma. Previously abandoned. Tends to withdraw and resist new interactions. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it certainly wasn't the terrifying indifference from my own family. Not a single one of them, in nearly a year, had visited or inquired about Jamie. Not one call, not one postcard, not a single toy. The boy was completely abandoned. And I, the one with no children, the one labeled selfish and living for myself, was the only one who couldn't turn a blind eye. That night, I wrote my first email to Jamie's caseworker. I introduced myself as his aunt and asked if I could visit. It wasn't an impulsive decision, it was instinct. It was the only thing I could think of in the 72 hours since hearing Jamie's name. And as I wrote the final lines of the email, one thought rang clear as a bell. If it's not me, then who? I received a reply from the New York State Department of Social Services on Tuesday afternoon, as I was preparing to end a long workday. The screen flashed the subject line. Regarding Jamie Brooks' case, response from caseworker. My hand froze, the mouse slid off the pad, and my heart raced as if I had just gotten a lottery notification, only this prize was an entirely different reality. The person who replied to me was Carla Evans, the case supervisor for Jamie. The tone in her letter was very cautious and professional. But I could still sense a hint of doubt behind every word. We acknowledge your biological relationship to the child. However, since you, Mary, have never been a legal guardian, the initial contact will need to be carefully considered. If you are genuinely interested in meeting and supporting Jamie, we can arrange a supervised visit at the community shelter in Baldwinsville. I didn't think for more than 3 seconds. That very evening, I booked a ride to Baldwinsville for Saturday morning. I had been there once before for a tech conference. I never imagined my return would be to search for my own nephew. The boy I had never hugged, never heard call me aunt. On Saturday morning, I stood in front of the large glass door of the Baldwinsville Children's Shelter, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear each beat. I wore a simple but warm brown coat. Clutching a paper bag with a box of colored pencils and a sketchbook I had carefully chosen. The first gift for a child I had never met. The room where we met was more empty and cold than I expected. The peeling paint on the walls, the plastic chairs arranged haphazardly, the dim fluorescent light above made the place feel like a sunless morning. I sat waiting for nearly 10 minutes, my palms sweaty. The door swung open. A woman with curly hair, wearing a name tag that read Carla Evans, walked in with a small boy dressed in a gray hoodie. His hair was long, reaching his ears, a bit messy. His eyes were downcast. He held a folded piece of paper in his hand. He was Jamie. Carla gently placed her hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Jamie, this is Aunt Mary, you can sit with her if you want. I'm just here to visit you." He didn't answer. He didn't sit right away. He just quietly walked to the table, pulled out a chair and sat across from me, the distance between us like a front line. No eye contact, no greeting. I smiled softly, trying to keep my voice calm. "Hi Jamie. I'm Mary, your mom's sister." He shrugged slightly. His eyes still fixed on the piece of paper in his hand. Silence filled the room. I opened a paper bag, took out the sketchbook and the box of colored pencils, and placed them on the table. "I don't know if you like to draw, but I brought this for you. If you don't like it, that's okay." He glanced at the gift, then took the sketchbook, flipping through a few pages, still silent. I thought he would put it down, but no. Jamie pulled out a pencil, lowered his head, and began to draw. I didn't say anything more. I just sat there watching. For over 20 minutes, I couldn't see the boy's face fully, but each stroke began to take shape, a robot flying through space, with details of armor and flames shooting from the engine on its back. I was stunned. "You draw beautifully," I said sincerely. "I've never seen anyone draw a robot like this." Jamie paused for a second, then bent his head to continue drawing. This time, I heard a small word. "Thanks." That was all. But to me, it felt like a door had quietly opened. Over the next 3 weeks, I returned to Baldwinsville every weekend. Each time we met, Jamie was cautious, but no longer avoiding me like before. I brought sketchbooks, a few small pastries, and a patience I didn't even know I had. The boy began talking more, especially about robots, spaceships, and the characters he created in his imagination. I vividly remember one Tuesday afternoon when he suddenly said, "I thought no one in the family remembered me." I choked up. It took me a few seconds to reply. "I didn't know things had gotten this bad. I'm sorry for coming so late, but I'm here now, and if you'll let me, I won't leave again." Jamie was silent, but for the first time, he looked me straight in the eyes. His brown eyes, just like my sister's, were no longer completely closed off. Back home in Albany, I began to seriously think about the next step. Visiting wasn't enough anymore. I wanted to protect Jamie. I wanted him to have a real home, not a temporary one, not temporary until the system can provide a better solution. I called Carla Evans again, this time with a firm tone. "I want to start the adoption process for Jamie." She was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "Mary, I must warn you, this will be a very long and difficult journey. Jamie has a complex case file, and his biological family, including his parents, has been recorded with many issues." "Are you sure?" "Sir?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm sure. If my whole family can turn their back on a child, then at least I can turn back. That boy deserves to be loved." Starting the adoption process for Jamie felt like stepping into a battle I had not anticipated would be this intense. I thought I would only face paperwork, procedures, and social services evaluations. But I was wrong. The most terrifying challenge came from the least expected place: my family. As soon as the news that I had officially filed to adopt Jamie reached my mother's ears, she called me at 7 a.m. before I had even finished making my coffee. "Mary, what the hell are you doing?" Her voice was cold as ice, with no trace of confusion or genuine concern. I paused, took a breath, and replied, "I'm doing the right thing, Mom. No one in the family cares about Jamie, so I will be the one to do it." "Who do you think you are? A hero? A savior? Or are you just trying to make Laura look bad?" I gripped my coffee cup tightly. "Laura abandoned her son, Mom. She lost custody. And no one in the family cares about that boy. Do you even remember his name? You're ruining everything, Mary. This family doesn't need more problems. You don't understand what it means to raise a child." I hung up the phone before she could say anything more. The anger inside me didn't explode. It simmered, smoldering like embers that hadn't been extinguished for a long time. Less than a week later, I received a call from Carla, Jamie's social worker. Her voice sounded a little tense. "Mary, I have to inform you that someone in your family has sent a letter opposing your adoption of Jamie. They are asking the court to temporarily delay the process." I froze in the hallway of my office. Colleagues walked by, greeting me, but I didn't hear a word. "Who sent the letter?" "Your parents. They say you're not fit to raise a child because you don't have parenting experience, live alone, and have a lifestyle." I squeezed the phone so tightly it almost broke. "They said I'm stealing Laura's child, didn't they?" The wording isn't direct, but that's the implication. I didn't know whether I was more angry or disappointed. The people who were supposed to be my parents chose to sabotage me instead of supporting me. They had never visited Jamie, never asked about him, never cared whether he was alive or dead. But they had enough time to write a letter to the court against me. I spent the whole night awake, but I didn't cry. Instead, I made a list of things to do: find a lawyer who specializes in adoption, gather witnesses to vouch for my ability to care for a child, and most importantly, create a real home for Jamie. Luckily, not everyone turned their back on me. People I once thought of as mere colleagues turned out to be a stronger support system than my own family. Julie, my best friend at the company, almost jumped for joy when I told her. "Oh my God, Mary! You're really adopting the boy? Finally, you're doing something more meaningful than just having lunch with me every day." She was the first one to help me pick the paint color for Jamie's new room. We bought navy blue paint and spent an entire Friday evening carefully sticking robot decals on the walls. Paul from the product design team volunteered to assemble Jamie's bunk bed, along with a rotating planet-shaped nightlight. "I was a foster kid," he said as he tightened screws. "I know how much a room can change how you feel about the world." And Madison, my neighbor, gave me a small wooden cabinet, with a note. "If you ever need a babysitter when you have late meetings, just call me." I sent Carla a picture of the new room. A brand new bed with galaxy-pitted pink sheets, a small bookshelf beside the study desk, and the robot painting Jamie had drawn hanging on the wall. Carla called me after she received the picture. "Mary, you're doing really well. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to continue, after all the opposition from your family?" I looked at the picture of Jamie smiling for the first time in the sketchbook I had taken. "I'm sure. Family isn't just about blood, Carla. Family is the one who stands by you when the whole world turns its back." Throughout the process, I was asked to provide many documents: pay stubs, asset declarations, and letters of recommendation. My parents refused to cooperate, but I was ready. I gave Carla the handwritten letter from Julie, stating that I was always the first to volunteer to help anyone at work when something happened. I sent a copy of an email from Paul, recounting how I had quietly donated my entire year-end bonus to a colleague battling a severe illness. I wasn't bragging, I just wanted to prove that I knew how to love, even if no one loved me back. One afternoon I went to pick up Jamie from the center after school. The boy walked out, holding a new drawing this time, a robot city. When he saw me, Jamie paused for a second, then ran over, hesitantly asking, "Aunt, can I hang this on the wall in my room?" I choked up. "That's your room, Jamie, you can hang whatever you want." For the first time, the boy hugged me. No words needed, that hug was enough for me to know I was doing the right thing. I still remember that morning, Jamie's 11th birthday. The sky over Albany was filled with gray clouds, but inside my heart felt brighter than it ever had. It was the first time I threw a birthday party for a child. The first time I bought balloons, blew them up until I was dizzy, and taped each one to the wall with double-sided tape. The first time I baked a cake, even though the decoration was so messy that I laughed at myself when I wrote, "Happy birthday, Jamie," in icing. And it was the first time Jamie was the center of attention. I had planned it for a whole month, invited 3 of his new friends from school, a few friendly neighbors, and even Carla the social worker, who had been following our journey from the very beginning. In the living room, I set up a drawing corner with a large paper board, watercolors, markers, and even superhero sticker sheets. Jamie came down the stairs at 9 a.m., his hair still messy and his eyes sleepy. I lit a candle on the small cake, then called out, "Happy birthday, my little space hero." The boy froze. His eyes widened, his mouth slightly parted. "Aunt, you did all this for me?" I nodded, lightly. But my heart felt like it was about to burst with emotion. "It's not just for you, it's because you deserve this." The entire party, Jamie didn't leave the drawing corner. He laughed, talked, expressions I hadn't seen in the months before. But what I'll always remember is when the party was almost over, and it was just the 2 of us sitting on the couch. Jamie turned to me, hesitantly asking, "Aunt Mary, can I call you Mom?" I didn't respond immediately, my breath caught in my throat. Then I nodded, slowly, but firmly. "You can call me whatever you want, Jamie." We only had a few weeks after that birthday to prepare for the court hearing that would determine permanent custody. Carla told me that Jamie had the right to speak, but it wasn't required. I had prepared myself that he might choose to remain silent, not because he didn't want to live with me, but out of fear. The legal system, despite its child protection laws, was still a cold and harsh world. On the morning of the court hearing, Jamie wore the navy blue shirt, the one I had carefully chosen for him last week. I tied his little tie, even though it was a bit loose and crooked, then bent down to ask, "Are you sure? You don't have to say anything if you don't want to." Jamie nodded. "I want to. I want people to know what I chose." The courtroom was small, cold, and as stiff as every courtroom I had ever seen in the movies. The judge was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and a stern face. On the other side of the room was the lawyer representing the family, someone I had never met, representing the objections from my parents. They didn't bother to show up. When it was Jamie's turn, the boy stood up, his hands clenched tightly together. I sat quietly below, my palms cold. "My name is Jamie Brooks," he began, his voice soft but steady. "And I want to live with Mom, Mary. I feel safe at her house, I have my own room, I have a place to draw. I don't want to be moved anywhere else." Everyone in the room was silent. Jamie took a breath and added, "I used to think I was invisible, but Mom Mary makes me feel like I really exist." I had tried to keep my composure throughout the hearing, but those words, they made me cry. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Carla. "Congratulations, Mary. The court has approved permanent custody of Jamie for you. From now on, the boy is officially your legal son." I sank down onto the living room floor, tears flowing like a flood breaking through a dam. After so many months of struggling with doubts, laws, and prying eyes, this moment had finally arrived. I rushed to the school to pick up Jamie earlier than usual. When he saw me standing at the gate, holding up an envelope, he ran over, mouth agape. "What's going on?" I held the papers in front of him. "You're officially my son now." Jamie stared at me for a few seconds, then, without warning, he ran up and hugged me tightly. "Mom." Those 2 words, said clearly for the first time, made everything inside me melt. I didn't need anyone out there to recognize me as a mother. As long as that boy was standing in front of me, calling me with all his trust and love, that was enough. That night I made Jamie's favorite, spaghetti with cheese. We sat on the living room floor watching cartoons, then together we stuck glowing stars on the ceiling of his bedroom. When I turned off the lights, the whole room lit up with little universes. Jamie looked up at the ceiling, then said, "I didn't think there would ever be a place like this. I didn't think there would be anyone who would really keep their promise to me." I lay beside him, my hand gently squeezing his small hand. "From now on, you won't have to doubt that anymore, Jamie. I'm here. Always." When Jamie officially moved in with me, I thought the hardest part was over. I had won the court case, overcome the objections from my family, and gained legal motherhood of a child I loved with all my heart. But it turned out, that victory was just the beginning of another journey. A journey of healing. The first week, Jamie had a hard time adjusting. Every morning he would repeat a familiar question. "Mom, are you sure I'll still be here tomorrow?" I always responded with a hug and a firm confirmation. "Definitely, this is your home." But Jamie's insecurity didn't disappear right away. It crept into every action. From him never daring to hang his clothes in the closet, always leaving them neatly in his backpack, to the habit of flinching every time someone knocked loudly on the door. And most clearly, in school. 2 weeks after moving in, the homeroom teacher called me in for a private meeting. She, Miss Hannah Miller, was a woman in her 40s, with a stern look but not lacking in empathy. "Jamie is smart," she said, "but he's struggling seriously with math. He doesn't focus, rushes through his work, and seems so afraid of being wrong that he won't even turn in his assignments." I froze. "What about the other subjects?" "Art is his bright spot. I've never seen a student draw in such detail as Jamie. But with math, we need more support." That evening, I sat with Jamie in the kitchen, spreading out the books in front of him. "Can you help me, Mom?" Jamie lowered his eyes. "I'm not good at these things. Every time I got something wrong, my old mom would yell. Then she wouldn't look at me anymore." I choked up. "Here, being wrong isn't a crime. Here, you'll learn again, from the beginning. And I'll be here every time you repeat a math problem." We started with simple things: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I wrote each math problem on a small whiteboard in the study room, and every time Jamie got it right, I stuck a gold star on the board. He gradually became interested in the stars, to the point where he started asking, "Do you have harder problems today, Mom?" At the same time, I decided to nurture Jamie's true strength, drawing. I signed him up for a community art class every Saturday at the Albany Art Center. On the first day, Jamie was completely silent. He just drew and drew and drew. But by the third class, a teacher named Marcus, a surrealist painter, leaned in close to me and whispered, "Your son has an adult's eye for space. The way he handles perspective and constructs shapes isn't like a child." A few weeks later, Marcus submitted Jamie's registration for a city-wide art competition. The theme, Dream City. Jamie drew for 3 days straight, each evening after dinner, asking, "Mom, does a city always have to have skyscrapers?" "No. A dream city can be anywhere you feel safe." Jamie's painting was of an expansive space, small houses floating in the sky, connected by rope bridges with flying robots guarding them. Each house had a porch full of flowers, and a wall painted with a bright star. Jamie titled the painting, "A Place Where No One Is Left Behind." When that piece was chosen for the finals and displayed at the Albany City Gallery, I could hardly believe it. On opening day, Jamie wore the shirt we called the Lucky Robot shirt. When viewers stopped in front of the painting and marveled at it, I saw the corners of his mouth turn up. "Do they really like it?" "You didn't just draw with your hands, Jamie. You drew with everything you've been through." We began creating small traditions. Every Friday became art night. Art night. The two of us would draw, paint figurines, and make collages. One time, Jamie suggested, "Next week let's draw you in a superhero suit, you're my hero." I didn't respond. I just hugged him tightly. No fancy words needed. Just knowing that the boy, once broken, now knew how to see someone as his support. We also began venturing out more. The first time I took Jamie to Lake George in the summer, he saw the clear water down to the bottom for the first time, and yelled as if he had discovered treasure. "Mom, is it really true that the water here never runs out? Just like the love I have for you." Jamie paused, then whispered, "You've said that twice now." I laughed. "And I'll say it 1,000 more times." The neighbors, who used to only nod in passing, had become friends. Becca, a widow living next door, often brought over cookies every Saturday afternoon, saying they were for the little artist who needs to refuel. Sam, an elderly war veteran, gave Jamie a set of watercolor paints. "Better than what school hands out." Jamie had new friends at school, a boy named Ethan who shared his love for comics. The two of them rode their bikes around the neighborhood, their laughter echoing all the way down the street. That evening, when Jamie completed his first math test with an A for the semester, I took him out for pizza. Between slices of pepperoni and bubbly sodas, he suddenly said, "Mom, you know, if someone had asked me where I wanted to live before, I would have said nowhere, but now, I have one." "Where's that?" He placed his hand on his chest. "Right here, where you are." The first message from Laura came on a Monday afternoon. I was standing in the kitchen, flipping pancakes on the skillet, when my phone rang. An unknown number. A short text. No period, no question, no apology. "I know Jamie is living with you. I want to see him." No please. No, it's your sister. Just a cold command. I stood frozen for a moment. My heart raced. The burnt smell from the skillet startled me. And I quickly flipped the scorched pancake. I read that message at least 10 times. Each time my stomach twisted. Not because I was afraid, but because the anger that had never dissipated was now bubbling up like boiling water. I didn't respond immediately. I spent 3 days thinking it over. Then texted back. "Jamie is fine, you should not contact him directly until he's ready. If you're serious, you can start by sending a letter." Laura didn't reply. I thought the matter was settled, but then, a week later, I received an email from Carla, the social worker who had handled Jamie's case before. "Mary, I've just been contacted by Laura Brooks. She's requesting to re-establish contact with Jamie." I decided to talk openly with Jamie. That evening, after dinner, I sat next to Jamie in the art room, where he was coloring a giant spaceship. "Jamie, I need to talk to you about something." He looked up, his face calm. but as soon as I mentioned Laura's name, his expression changed instantly. His hand gripped the colored pencil tightly. His back stiffened, as if preparing to be hit. "She wants to see you," I said softly. "But I won't make you do anything. You have the right to refuse." Silence. A long while passed before Jamie quietly said, "I don't remember what she looks like. But I remember the fear of living with her. And the smell of cigarettes, of alcohol. Every time she yelled, my ears felt like they were going to explode." I didn't ask any more questions, I just held his hand. "Then I won't let anyone hurt you again, Jamie." But Laura didn't stop. She started texting me every day. At first it was short messages. "I just want to know if he's okay." But then they became harsh, threatening, even calling me a child thief. I blocked the number. She created a new one. I changed my email. She made fake accounts. Things got worse when Laura began posting on social media, publicly, with my name, and even pictures of Jamie. A particular post spread quickly, beginning with the line, "My sister has stolen my son to turn him into a display piece for her better life." The comments under the post were a storm of ignorant people. "That's outrageous. How could someone steal their own child? People like them, childless and infertile, are dangerous." I felt my hands shaking as I read each line. Not because I was scared, but because I was angry. Because I had spent every minute, every dollar, every breath, healing Jamie. And now, I was being falsely accused by the one who had abandoned her own flesh and blood. I hired a lawyer. A sharp woman named Cynthia Grant, who had represented many cases involving children, whose biological parents sought to regain custody after losing their rights. "We need to send an immediate contact ban," Cynthia said. "Based on the history of abuse, Laura's criminal record and Jamie's testimony, I believe we have a solid foundation." "I don't want to send her to jail," I said. "I just want her to stay away from my son." While I worked with the lawyer, the people in my family continued to stoke the fire. Patricia, my cousin who had once mocked me for not having children, shared Laura's post with a note. "This family really has some people with no shame." My mom called not to ask about Jamie but to yell, "You've done enough, Mary. Give the boy back to his mother." "That's blood, Mary. Your sister is falling apart. And, what are you doing?" I no longer had the patience to be gentle. "You talk about blood, but since Jamie went to the foster home, has anyone in this family visited him? Has anyone bought him a new pair of shoes? A notebook? A birthday gift? Or is it because now that I'm standing out, you're starting to get uncomfortable?" My mom was silent. Then, she said one last thing. "You are the shame of this family." I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just felt free. A week later, the court approved the contact restriction order. Laura was not allowed to contact Jamie in any form, letters, messages, social media, unless she had written consent from me and third-party supervision. Jamie sighed in relief when I handed him the copy of the order. The boy hugged me, his head resting on my shoulder like a small child. "Do you think she will just go away?" I didn't dare promise. "Whatever she does, you still have me. And I won't go away." That night Jamie opened a new box of colored pencils, drawing until late into the night. I thought he was drawing another robot or city like usual. But when I walked into the room and looked at the latest drawing, I froze. It was two people standing on a hanging bridge over a deep abyss. One adult and one child. Behind them was darkness. Ahead was the sun. Jamie looked up, his gaze determined. "Mom, you know, we're crossing the bridge. And I won't look back." After all the noise, slander, the malicious posts on social media and the suffocating phone calls from my mother, I thought I had become used to the silence. But then one Sunday morning, my phone rang, this time from a name I hadn't seen in years. Anna Whitaker. Anna was the daughter of my eldest aunt, someone I used to be very close with when I was a child, but as we grew older, she took a different path, married young, and slowly disappeared from the increasingly fake family gatherings. I had almost forgotten she existed, until that message appeared. "I've been following everything that's happening. You're not alone, Mary. And if you're willing, I'd like to say that publicly. I didn't know what Anna was planning to do. But 2 days later, while having lunch with Jamie, I received a link to a Facebook post. Anna's profile picture, still with a gentle smile and light curly hair, appeared above a long paragraph. Before I could read, Jamie spoke up. "Who's writing about Mom? Is Mom famous now?" I read every word slowly. My heart stopped from emotion. "I'm Anna Whitaker. I've known Mary since we were little, and what I know best is this: she has never done anything for the sake of fame." Mary adopting Jamie was not about stealing anyone. It was because the boy deserves someone who loves him, protects him, and doesn't abandon him. When the whole family turned their back, Mary turned towards him. And I'm proud to be her cousin. The post was shared hundreds of times within hours. Beneath it were countless comments from strangers, single mothers, former orphans, people who had been rejected by their families, all sending words of encouragement. For the first time in months, I felt supported. The news spread so far that Jamie's school held a ceremony to honor students who had achieved outstanding accomplishments that year, and Jamie was nominated for the Confidence and Outstanding Effort Award. His art teacher, Miss Lauren, was the one who recommended him to the school board. On the day of the ceremony, Jamie wore a little gray suit, his hair carefully combed and lightly sprayed. He was still a bit nervous, clutching my hand tightly. I bent down and whispered, "You don't have to say anything big, just be yourself." When Jamie Brooks' name was called, the entire hall erupted in applause. He walked up to the stage, hesitated for a moment, then raised his head. His eyes locked on the row of seats where I was sitting. "I just want to say, thank you, Mom Mary, for giving me a place to be myself. I used to think I was the one no one remembered. But now it's different. I'm not invisible anymore." I felt my throat tighten, and I wasn't surprised to see that many people in the hall were quietly wiping their tears. That evening I sat in the living room watching the video of Jamie's speech that Miss Lauren had sent, and at that moment, I knew it was time to close another chapter of my life. I opened my contacts list on my phone, scrolling through the names: Mom, Dad, Vanessa, Patricia. I had kept them there, like a habit, like a burden that silently wouldn't let go. But now, there was no reason to keep them. I deleted each name, without hesitation. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because I wanted to hold on to the peace that Jamie and I had fought so hard to achieve. Life after that wasn't perfect, but it was fulfilling. We continued our art night Fridays, now with 2 of Jamie's classmates joining us. The boy taught his friends how to mix colors, how to use watercolors for a blurred background. I stood in the kitchen making hot cocoa, hearing the laughter from the living room, my heart light as the morning breeze. In the summer we took a road trip to Maine. Jamie saw seagulls for the first time, ran on wet sand for the first time, and yelled across the ocean, hearing his voice echo back. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Jamie walked into my room, holding a new drawing pad. "Mom, I drew this for you." I took it. It was a picture of 2 people sitting on a park bench, holding hands, with a backdrop of bright autumn trees. Jamie looked up, his eyes shining under the nightlight. "You know, someone once asked me what the best thing that ever happened to me was. And I answered, you." I hugged him, saying nothing, just silently shedding tears, because of happiness, because I knew I wasn't alone anymore, and because after all the hurt, this journey had finally led me to where I needed to be. A family not from blood but from true love. The ending didn't come from a grand moment, but from the small details, the trusting looks, the gentle mom calls every morning, the pieces of paper filled with dreams posted all over the bedroom, and the silent nights with just the sound of pencils gliding over paper. I was once considered unworthy of being a mother, just because I didn't give birth. But I did more than that. I listened, I waited. I loved without asking for anything in return, and most importantly, I chose not to abandon. And Jamie, the boy who had once been turned away by the whole world, now walked with his head held high, knowing he was loved, recognized, and most importantly, chosen. We don't need anyone's recognition anymore. Because we have each other, and no one can take that away from us. Mary and Jamie's story is proof that love doesn't require blood, but needs patience, compassion, and the courage to protect what's right. In a world where people easily turn away, Mary chose to stay, to love a child who was abandoned and give him a real home. Their journey reminds us that family isn't just where we're born, but where someone chooses us every day with all their heart. What do you think about Mary and Jamie's journey? Do you think love is enough to heal the deepest wounds? Please share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more touching stories about family and life.